it's Penny here, and today we're going to be doing the mid-year book freakout tag. This is a tag that you no longer really need to be tagged for. Everyone can do it around the middle of the year, and it's just an excuse to talk about some of the books that you've read so far, because it is the middle-ish of the year, somehow. So let's talk about some of the books I've read so far this year. The first question is, what is the best book you've read so far this year? And I've read 90 books this year, so it's pretty hard to pick just one book. However, I can save some of the books I really liked for the second question, and I do think I can maybe lock it down to like 2 favorites for the year so far. So firstly, I would pick All the Crooked Saints by Maggie Stiefvater. So this is a Latinx inspired magical realism story with this family who is able to grant miracles. The miracles, though, are quite strange things. This is a very Maggie Stiefvater book. Things get stranger and stranger. It's like all the strange stuff in the Raven cycle, but taken to another level. And so I know that it's going to probably be, for a lot of people, too weird, but for me, I really love it. I really like kind of the theme is around people having to deal with the darkness inside them, and at the time that I read it, it was just the perfect time for me to read that. I loved all the characters, I loved the family dynamics, and I just really loved this book. The other book that I really loved so far this year, I don't have because I borrowed it from the library, and that is Trail of Lightning by Rebecca Roanhorse. So this is the first book in the 6 World series. I hopefully will be getting the second book very soon, but it's set in a post-apocalyptic world, specifically on a Native American reservation where they are very isolated from the problems of the rest of the world, but they have their own problems. We're following Mags, who is like a monster hunter, and she also has some like quite interesting relationships with some of the gods. So as I said, I love that one as well. Also, like an honorary mention for The Guest List by Lucy Foley, which is probably my favorite thriller of the year so far. I don't read that many thrillers, but I did particularly like that one. Then the second question is the best sequel you've read so far this year, and for me this would definitely have to be the Realm of the Elderlings series. So I started reading the first trilogy last year, and then this year I continued on with the Live Ship Traders series and then the Tawny Man trilogy, and I have loved both of those series. In the Live Ship Traders, we're following these ships that are able to gain a consciousness kind of in relation to the family that owns them, and then in the Tawny Man we're following Fitz and the Fool, who are characters from the first trilogy. So they try to help the prince to learn to deal with his magic, but also help the kingdom to kind of gain some peace with the people who have the wit, which is the ability to like speak and bond with animals. But people with the wit in the past have always been shunned, and so the woman who is now the queen is trying to figure out how to get everybody to get along. There's a lot going on in this series. The books are quite big. I have like, this is the first book of the Live Ship Traders. They're quite long books. They've got a lot to them, but I do think what I love the most about them is actually the characters. I just love them all. Even the ones I don't like, I love them. Then the next question is, what is a new release that you haven't read yet? So I definitely want to get to A Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I'm currently like 96th in the hold queue, but there's about 300 people on that queue, so I'm actually in the first third. So we'll see how long that takes me to get, maybe this year. And then as well, I have a hold at the library on Deck of Omens by Christine Lynn Herman, which is the sequel to The Devouring Grey, which I read last year. And I also have a hold on The City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, which I read the prequel short story for that and I really loved it, so I'm super excited for that one as well. Then the next question is most anticipated release for the rest of the year, and honestly there are so many that I think I'm going to make a separate video for that, and I thought maybe I would just pick out one that I'm excited for the end of the year to talk about now, but how am I supposed to pick? I can't, so I'm not going to. Then the next question is the biggest disappointment. And for me, this would definitely be How Rory Thorne Destroyed the Multiverse. So this was supposed to be like a space opera retelling of Sleeping Beauty. Sleeping Beauty is my favorite Disney princess, and I love twisty time stuff and multiverse stuff, but there was no multiverse. And the writing style of the story was awful. I hated it. And I still can't get over the fact that why would anyone think it was a good idea to put multiverse in the title of a book and then not have anything about a multiverse in the story? Like, eh? Then next we have your biggest surprise. I think for me this was Junji Ito. So I got this one from my brother last year for Christmas, and then I continued on to read Uzumaki and the Shiva collection from the library, and I love them all. It's like really dark, twisty, horror manga stuff. And I mean, I guess I shouldn't be surprised because my brother does have some idea of what I like. So when he gave me this, I should have known that I would love it. But I was like, looks kind of weird, but maybe it'll be cool. And it was. So like, cool. Then we have favorite new author. So that could be either a debut author or a new to you author. And for that, I would have to go with Rebecca Roanhorse just because I loved Trail of Lightning so much. Also, I started following her on Twitter and she seems pretty cool on there as well. Next we have a new fictional crush. I'm old, I don't get fictional crushes. Maybe old people do, but I don't know. I don't care that much. Then for new favorite character, I think I would actually pick Tintaglia, who is a dragon in the Live Ship Traders books. I think she only really comes into it in the third book, Ship of Destiny. But Tintaglia is this majestic dragon. She's amazing, and because of that, she really thinks humans are quite shit. She looks down on them. She, I guess, will deign to work with them when she needs them, but really, humans are pretty awful. And I just love that perspective because, let's admit it, humans can be pretty awful. And if you were a majestic dragon, wouldn't you just look down on them and think, what are these rubbish things? I think so. So I love her. Then we have a book that made you cry, and I feel like I'm talking about The Realm of the Elderlings a lot in this video, but I've been really loving that series. So in The Tawny Man, whenever a particular character refers to another character as his mother, my heart just breaks and I love it. And there's also in that like some animal deaths which are like awful, but also like I don't know, like I don't think that they're necessarily bad because it's part of real life, and I think that the grief is dealt with really well, but I cried so much. I will also say, so for a non-Realm of the Elderlings answer, I cried in Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. So in this book, it starts with Lydia is dead, but they don't know this yet. And then you kind of get some backstory and find out some of the events leading up to when Lydia, the daughter in this family, has died. And some of those things were just very upsetting. I thought the start of the book was a bit slow, but once we got into Lydia and her brother's story, and also the younger sister's story, I cried. I cried a lot. But then, contrasting that, so a book that made me happy, I thought of a couple for this. Firstly, Dog Days, which was a little Lock and Key short comic. It's just a silly story. The Lock and Key world, this family has all these magical keys, and so in this story, some of the kids have used the best key in order to turn their dog into a human, and so they're just hanging out with this boy, like there are these three boys, hanging out, having a conversation, except that one of them is a dog, and so he's answering the questions they're asking him like a dog would answer them. It was really cute and really funny. Kind of pointless, but it made me happy. Another book that made me happy, I remember for sure because I was reading this book while I walked around my house, and when I realized what was going to happen, I did a little dance because I was quite happy about it, even though it's an awful thriller with like murder and all sorts of violence. Still, I was kind of happy. Next is the most beautiful book that you have bought this year or received. I haven't been buying that many books. I've read a lot of library books this year. I'm unemployed, so that's what you do, but also I don't tend to buy that many books. I always think you should try them through the library before you buy them, or at least if you're trying to save your money, that's what you should do. So there is, though, one beautiful book that I bought, and that would be The Obelisk Gate by N.K. Jemisin. This is the second book in the Broken Earth trilogy, and I have been really liking it. I would say I liked the first book a little bit more than the second book, but I'm going to be reading the third book soon, and I'm excited to get to it because there is just so much cool stuff in this world. It's like a post-apocalyptic world, but the world keeps ending, and this is supposedly the time it's about to end for the last time. We've got these people with these magical earth abilities, but they're mostly treated like slaves and exiled when they're not needed. And we follow this woman who's just found her husband has killed her child because he found out that the child had these earth abilities. But there's so much more, and if you like the moon, the bits about the moon are my most favorite bits in this book. Honestly, I'm so obsessed with the moon in this, and the moon in the real world now as well. So not only is it a beautiful book, but I really love the story. Then the last question is, what books do you still need to read by the end of the year? Quite a lot. I made a list at the start of the year of 20 books I want to read in 2020, as well as a bunch of anticipated releases. And I had also thought that maybe I would be able to get my TBR shelf down to 0 this year. It's looking less and less likely. But I do think I might do a separate like goals check-in video later, so I'll go into the details about those lists as part of that. But one book that I want to read by the end of the year that isn't in any of those is Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. So that's the third book in the Stormlight Archives. Partly I want to get to it because the fourth book is coming out this year, but also I want to read it before I get too far away from when I read the first and second books. But they're just so long that I'm not sure where I can fit it in because I'm really terrible at the moment at getting through long books. But hopefully soon. So that is my mid-year freak out. I never really feel like these videos are ever much of a freak out. But regardless, if you have a place that you talk about books, I would love to know your answers to the questions, or you can always post down below in the comments to let me know. Or as always, if you have read any of the books that I talked about today, I would love to talk with you more about them down in the comments. Otherwise, I hope that you're doing well and keeping safe, and I will see you next time.